I always thought my life was picture perfect. I was married to Lisa, the woman who had captured my heart since we were kids. We grew up in the same neighborhood, played in the same schoolyard, and shared dreams of building a future together. Fast forward to our ninth anniversary, and I thought we had it all: a cozy house, a steady income, and a beautiful daughter named Mia. But just as the clock struck midnight on our anniversary, everything started to unravel. It began with the little things: the way Lisa would stay out late after work, claiming she was busy with projects. She'd come home with that same tired, distracted look on her face. I brushed it off at first, attributing it to the pressures of her job as a marketing manager. But as weeks turned into months, I noticed changes in her behavior. She was often glued to her phone, texting and laughing at things that I wasn't a part of. When I would ask what was so funny, she'd roll her eyes and say, "It's just work stuff, don't worry about it." The red flags were waving all over the place, but I was in denial. After all, we had a good life, right? Who would cheat in such a fairy tale? I wanted to be the supportive husband, so I ignored the whispers in my mind. But then came the moment that turned my world upside down. One evening, I was cleaning out the garage when I stumbled upon a crumpled piece of paper in a box of old photos. It was a receipt from a fancy restaurant, one where Lisa and I had never been. The date: a week after our anniversary. As I examined it more closely, I saw the name of a man, Mark. My heart sank. Mark was not just any guy. He was my childhood best friend, the one I had shared countless memories with. The betrayal burned like acid in my stomach. Fueled by a mix of anger and betrayal, I decided to dig deeper. I found several more receipts, hotel bookings, and even an email thread that contained flirtatious exchanges between them. It was like a punch to the gut, the realization that not only was my wife cheating on me, but she was doing it with my oldest friend. I felt sick. How could they do this to me? How could she do this to our family? The confrontation came a few days later. I decided to wait until the weekend when Lisa was home and the mood was more relaxed. We sat across from each other at the dining table. Mia was asleep in her room, and I could feel the tension in the air. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaky yet firm. She looked up, a hint of nervousness creeping into her eyes. "I found something that doesn't add up." "What do you mean?" she asked, feigning innocence. I threw the receipts and emails onto the table, watching as her face drained of color. For a moment, silence filled the room, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Is this a joke? You're cheating on me with Mark?" I demanded, my voice rising. Her reaction was not what I expected. Instead of remorse or guilt, she laughed, an unsettling, cold laugh that made my skin crawl. "Oh, please, like you could ever think I'd be with someone like him. That's ridiculous," she retorted, her eyes narrowing. She quickly switched tactics, claiming I was imagining things, that I was overreacting like I always did. The denial was infuriating. I shot back. "This isn't imaginary, Lisa. I have proof. You think I wouldn't notice you sneaking around?" Her excuses were as flimsy as the words she used to deflect my accusations. She insisted it was just a friendship and that I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had been blindsided, and the betrayal cut deeper than anything I could have anticipated. As she continued to deny everything, I felt a surge of anger mixed with despair. The emotional roller coaster was overwhelming. How could I reconcile the woman I loved with this stranger sitting across from me? I felt betrayed, crushed, and utterly lost. I knew I had to make a decision. The life I had built with her felt shattered, and I needed to find a way to heal. But how? And what was I willing to sacrifice? The days that followed the confrontation were a blur. I felt like a ghost in my own house, moving through the motions but barely registering my surroundings. Lisa's denial had a chilling effect on me. I was living with a woman who was no longer the person I thought I knew. Each time I saw her, memories of our past flooded back: our wedding day, the birth of Mia, the dreams we had shared. But now those memories felt tainted, like a beautiful painting splattered with paint. After a week of living together under the same roof but worlds apart, I realized I couldn't stay in this limbo. My emotional turmoil had transformed into a burning need for resolution. I started formulating a plan, not for reconciliation but for revenge. I wanted her to feel the pain I was feeling, to understand the consequences of her actions. I began by gathering evidence, not just to confront her again, but also to ensure I had leverage. I reached out to a private investigator, a discreet man named Frank who had a reputation for getting the job done. I explained my situation, and he agreed to help. The idea of having someone else on my side, someone who could uncover the truth, felt like a small comfort. As the weeks passed, Frank worked his magic. He followed Lisa and Mark, collecting footage and documentation. That confirmed their affair. I watched the first video he sent me in a cramped coffee shop, my heart pounding. There they were, laughing together, holding hands and sharing intimate moments that should have been mine. It was a gut-wrenching reminder of how she had betrayed not just me, but our family. I felt a fire igniting within me, a desire to make them pay. With each passing day, I became more resolute. I knew I had to act quickly. Lisa was living in a blissful state of ignorance, unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. I was still going to work, keeping a facade of normalcy for Mia's sake, but inside I was preparing for the confrontation that would shatter Lisa's world. On the evening of Mia's birthday, I decided it would be the perfect time to execute my plan. I had organized a small party at home, inviting a few close friends and family. Lisa was excited, completely unaware that I was about to turn her life upside down. The decorations were up, the cake was in the fridge, and Mia was buzzing with excitement. As the guests arrived, I played the part of the doting husband and father. We laughed, opened presents, and celebrated, but in the back of my mind I was biding my time. I knew that once the cake was served and the party reached its peak, I'd have my moment. When the time finally came, I stood up, clinking my glass to get everyone's attention. "Can I have your attention, everyone?" I said, feigning a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "I have something I need to share." There was a moment of confusion, and Lisa looked at me with a mix of concern and curiosity. The room went quiet and I could feel the tension building. "I know this isn't the time or place, but I think it's important that you all know what's been happening behind the scenes." I turned to Lisa, my heart racing. "For the last few months, Lisa has been having an affair with my best friend, Mark. Isn't that right, Lisa?" The room went silent as I dropped the bombshell. Gasps filled the air and I could see the color drain from her face. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, glancing nervously around the room. "That's not true. This is not the time for this." "Oh, but it is the time," I countered, my voice steady. "You see, I have evidence." I pulled out my phone and played the video Frank had sent me, showing the moments of intimacy between Lisa and Mark. I could hear the shocked whispers and gasps from our friends and family, but all I could focus on was the look of horror on Lisa's face. As the video ended, I looked at Lisa, who was now visibly shaken. "You want to explain this, or are you just going to keep pretending?" I pushed. The emotional release of that moment was cathartic but bittersweet. I could see the shocked expressions on our friends' faces, some looking at Lisa with pity, others with disbelief. Her facade was shattered and the reality of her actions was finally laid bare. Lisa's initial shock quickly morphed into outrage. "How could you do this to me?" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "You're ruining our daughter's birthday." "No, Lisa," I said, my voice low and steady. "You ruined this family. You chose to betray me. I'm just showing everyone the truth." As the party dissolved into chaos, I felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. I had gotten my revenge, but at what cost? The aftermath of that moment would shift everything in our lives, and I was left contemplating whether this was truly the end or merely the beginning of a much longer battle. The fallout from that night was chaotic and emotionally charged. Our friends and family filtered out of the house in disbelief, some offering hurried apologies, while others confronted Lisa with questions. I felt like I was watching a train wreck in slow motion, and I couldn't look away. Mia was still in her room, blissfully unaware of the turmoil erupting in the living room, but I knew I had to protect her from this nightmare. Lisa's initial outrage turned to a desperate plea. "You're going to regret this, you know," she said, her voice low and venomous. "You've brought this all out in the open, and now everyone knows our dirty laundry." "Your dirty laundry," I corrected her. "You made this choice." You think I wanted to humiliate you. This was your doing." Her expression shifted again and I saw a flicker of vulnerability. "You don't understand what it's like for me. I was unhappy," she shouted. But I was too far gone and her excuses felt like feeble attempts to justify her actions. Over the next few days, the reality of our situation sunk in. Lisa moved into the guest room and the house felt like a battleground. We avoided each other, the silence more deafening than any argument we could have had. I focused on Mia, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy for her sake, but I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on my chest. My thoughts were a swirling storm of anger, betrayal, and sorrow. I was grappling with the aftermath of the revelation, and I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. The life we had built together felt like ashes, and I couldn't help but wonder if it was worth salvaging. As I was sorting through the mess of our shattered life, I received a text from Mark. "I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't mean for it to happen. Can we talk?" I felt a surge of anger at the audacity of the man who had betrayed me. How could he think I would want to talk to him after everything? I wanted revenge, yes, but I hadn't considered how to deal with him directly. I contemplated how to respond. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind him of the bond we once had and how he threw it away for a fleeting affair. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "What's there to talk about?" I typed back. "You've already said everything you needed to say by sleeping with my wife." A few minutes later, he replied, "I know I messed up, but I still care about you. I never wanted to hurt you." It was infuriating. "You think that's a valid excuse? You're just as much to blame. Don't act like this was a one-sided affair." He didn't respond, and I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. I was beginning to realize that I didn't want to wallow in anger forever. I wanted to take control of my life again. But how? I decided then and there that I wouldn't let this situation define me. It was time to shift my focus. I started taking steps to secure my future both emotionally and financially. I consulted with a lawyer about the divorce process, making sure to understand my rights and the best way to protect my interests. The thought of divorce felt surreal, but deep down I knew it was the only option left. The next week I filed for divorce. Lisa was taken aback and I saw the panic in her eyes as I presented the papers to her. "You can't be serious," she exclaimed. "We can fix this. We can go to therapy or something." "There's nothing to fix, Lisa," I said, my voice steady. "You chose this path. You've made your bed and now you have to lie in it." Her pleas fell on deaf ears. I was done being her emotional punching bag. I needed to focus on rebuilding my life, and that meant cutting ties with the toxic elements that had seeped into our relationship. As the divorce proceedings began, the process was grueling. I found myself drowning in paperwork, and the emotional strain was intense. I often found solace in the small moments with Mia, who was my beacon of light in this dark time. I took her to the park, shared ice cream, and tried to give her a sense of normalcy amidst the chaos. But the nights were the hardest. I would lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with feelings of betrayal and loss. I missed the life I once had and the woman I had loved. But each time I thought about Lisa, the anger would rise again, reminding me of why I was doing this. Meanwhile, Lisa attempted to present a facade of normalcy, insisting that she wanted to make things work. She suggested family dinners and outings. I saw through her attempts. She was desperate to hold onto the life we had. But I was done playing pretend. It was during this time that I made a decision. I wanted to thrive, not just survive. I started focusing on my career again, pouring myself into work and finding ways to elevate my position at the company. I set new goals, not just for my career but for my personal life as well. I began exercising regularly, rediscovering hobbies I had long abandoned, and surrounding myself with supportive friends who reminded me what loyalty and respect looked like. I felt a shift within me, slowly. But surely I was reclaiming my life. The heartache hadn't disappeared, but I was learning to channel it into something positive. I wasn't just wanting revenge anymore. I was determined to thrive, not just to survive. As the divorce proceedings continued, I felt a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. On one hand, there was the liberation that came with reclaiming my life. On the other, the memories of what I had lost still haunted me. Each time I looked at Mia, I felt a pang of guilt for what she was going through, the toll this turmoil took on her little heart. Lisa, despite her betrayal, was still Mia's mother, and the thought of her being hurt, emotionally or otherwise, was difficult to reconcile. But I reminded myself that this wasn't just about me. It was about creating a stable environment for our daughter. I wanted to shield her from the pain of our broken marriage while ensuring she had the love and support she needed. I adapted our co-parenting arrangements carefully. I suggested that Lisa could come over on weekends to spend time with Mia, but I made it clear that it had to be a structured environment. I didn't want to expose Mia to any volatile situations or emotional outbursts. Lisa agreed, but I could see the frustration simmering beneath her surface. She wanted me back, and the more I stood firm in my decision, the more desperate she became. In the midst of all this, I found myself reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in years. One night, I met up with an old college buddy, Jake, who had always been a source of encouragement and laughter. Over beers, I shared my story, how I had been blindsided by Lisa, and how I was rebuilding my life from the ground up. "You're doing the right thing, man," Jake said, clapping me on the back. "She doesn't deserve you. Just focus on what makes you happy. Life's too short for games." His words resonated with me. I realized that I had spent far too long being a pawn in someone else's game. It was time to take control and live life on my own terms. With renewed determination, I began exploring new opportunities, both personally and professionally. I signed up for a couple of courses at a local community college, focusing on skills that could advance my career. I also joined a gym, rediscovering the joy of working out. Each step I took pushed me further away from the pain and closer to a life I wanted to create for myself and Mia. As my self-confidence grew, so did my ability to cope with what had happened. I found solace in my therapy sessions, where I could openly discuss my feelings without fear of judgment. My therapist emphasized the importance of self-compassion, teaching me that it was okay to grieve the loss of my marriage, even while I was embracing a new chapter. I kept my interactions with Lisa strictly related to Mia. Whenever we spoke, there was an undercurrent of tension. I could see she was struggling with the consequences of her actions. One day, as we were exchanging Mia for the weekend, Lisa surprised me by saying, "I miss us, you know. We could still fix this." My response was measured. "Lisa, it's not just about missing what we had. You made choices. You can't just erase them because you're feeling guilty now." She looked hurt, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. "I know I messed up, but it doesn't have to end like this." I felt a pang of empathy, but I stood firm. "I appreciate you saying that, but I can't go back. It's too late." The conversation left both of us in a somber mood. I returned home, feeling the weight of her words but also liberated by my resolve. I was reclaiming not just my life but also my happiness. As summer approached, I began to notice positive changes in Mia as well. She was adapting well to the new routine, and I was determined to keep her feeling secure and loved. I planned little outings like trips to the beach and hiking adventures to create joyful memories despite the chaos swirling around us. One particular weekend, I took Mia to the local fair. We laughed, rode the carousel, and indulged in cotton candy. Watching her giggle and smile filled me with warmth. It reminded me of the kind of father I wanted to be, one who was present, supportive, and happy. That day, as we watched the sunset over the fairgrounds, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The path ahead might be uncertain, but I was ready to embrace it. I had learned a lot about myself through this process. I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for, and I had the power to shape my own story. However, the peace was short-lived. Just when I thought I could finally breathe and focus on rebuilding, I received an unexpected call from Mark. He wanted to meet. I couldn't believe it. The nerve. After everything, he thought he could waltz back into my life and explain himself. I felt the anger bubbling up again, but I also felt a strange sense of curiosity. I hadn't confronted him directly since the fallout. Maybe it was time to put the pieces together and get closure, not just for me, but for Mia's future as well. I agreed to meet him at a local cafe, my heart pounding as I prepared for what would undoubtedly be an uncomfortable conversation. I wasn't sure what I was going to say to him, but I knew I had to face this chapter head-on. As I approached the cafe, I could feel a mix of anticipation and dread knotting in my stomach. Mark was already seated at a small table outside, tapping nervously on his phone. He looked up when I arrived, and the moment our eyes met, I saw a flicker of guilt cross his face. Good, he should feel guilty. I took a seat across from him, my heart racing. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," he said, his voice low and hesitant. "Let's skip the pleasantries," I interrupted. "You know why we're here, you and Lisa. How could you do that to me?" Mark shifted uncomfortably in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "I know I can't take back what I did. I messed up big time, and I'm sorry for hurting you." The words felt hollow, and I could see he was struggling to find the right ones. "Sorry isn't enough," I replied, my voice steady but laced with anger. "You've ruined a lot more than just our friendship. Do you even understand the impact this has on Mia?" He nodded, looking down at the table. "I do. I've thought about it every day. I never meant to hurt her. It just happened. Lisa and I had a connection, and I didn't stop to think about the consequences." "A connection?" I scoffed, my face flush with rage. "You think that's an excuse? You knew she was my wife, Mark. You were supposed to be my friend. You betrayed both of us." He sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I realize that now. I was being stupid and selfish. Lisa was going through a tough time, and I thought I was helping her, but I see how wrong I was." "Helping her?" I echoed incredulously. "You call sleeping with her while she's married helping? You're just as guilty as she is." "I know," Mark said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry for everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I regret it." I leaned in, my emotions boiling just beneath the surface. "Regret doesn't fix the damage you've done. You've destroyed our lives, and that's not something that can be undone with an apology." He looked up, his eyes pleading. "I'm trying to take responsibility. I want to make things right, even if it means stepping back from Lisa. I just wanted to explain myself, to give you my side of the story." I considered his words, feeling the weight of frustration and anger. "You think walking away from Lisa will make up for it? You've already put the pieces in motion. You can't just erase what happened." "I know," he replied, his expression somber, "but I don't want to be the reason you and Lisa can't co-parent effectively. If that means cutting ties with her, then I will. I don't want to hurt you anymore." I stared at him for a long moment, weighing my thoughts. "You should have thought about all this before you got involved with her. There's no easy way out of this." "I'm sorry," he said again, his voice shaky. "If it's any consolation, I really thought Lisa was going to leave you for me. But now that I see how much pain I've caused, I realize she was never worth it." His admission hung in the air, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. I had never expected to feel even a hint of sympathy for him, yet here I was, grappling with the complexities of betrayal and regret. "Why did you even want to meet me?" I asked, my tone softening slightly. "What do you hope to gain from this conversation?" "I wanted to apologize, to take responsibility for my actions," he replied earnestly. "And honestly, I wanted to make sure you're okay. I know I can't fix this, but I don't want to be a part of the mess between you and Lisa anymore." I pondered his words. "You can't just walk away without consequences. You don't get to play the victim here." "I get that. I'm not trying to play the victim," he insisted. "I just want to move on and hope to help you find some peace. I know it won't erase my mistakes, but I want to be better. I owe you that much." My anger began to soften, replaced with a sense of clarity. "If you really want to make this right, then step back from her completely. No more contact. Let her deal with the consequences of her actions." He nodded earnestly. "I can do that, I promise. I just want to make sure you can focus on what's best for Mia." "Good," I said, feeling a hint of satisfaction. "If you genuinely mean what you're saying, then this is the first step toward rebuilding trust, not just with me, but with yourself." As our conversation continued, I could feel the tension easing. We talked about the impact of our choices, the pain we were both experiencing, and how we could both move forward. It didn't erase the hurt, but it was a step toward understanding, and oddly enough, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. When we finally parted ways, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had stood up for myself and confronted the man who had betrayed me. I was empowered, ready to continue my journey of healing and growth. As I drove home, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I would no longer let Lisa's actions define me. Instead, I would focus on being the best father I could be for Mia and being true to myself. It was time to embrace this next chapter of my life, one that was filled with promise and possibility. However, I knew Lisa would react to this meeting. She wouldn't take kindly to the fact that I had spoken with Mark and that he had agreed to cut ties. I prepared myself for the inevitable confrontation that would come next. I had a feeling she would come up with another storm of excuses, and I was ready to face her head-on. When I got home that day, I found Lisa pacing the living room. She looked up as I walked in, confusion and anger etched across her face. "So, I hear you met with Mark. What was that all about?" I took a deep breath, feeling my heart race. "We talked, and I made it clear that I want him out of our lives, especially for Mia's sake." "Out of our lives," she echoed, her voice rising. "And you think that's going to fix everything? This isn't just about Mark, you know, it's about us." "Us?" I replied, incredulous. "There is no us anymore, Lisa. You made a choice, and that choice destroyed everything. You can't just expect me to overlook your betrayal." She crossed her arms defensively. "I made mistakes, yes. But I didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. Can't we at least try to fix this? I still love you." "Love?" I shot back, my tone sharp. "Love doesn't come with betrayal. You can't just switch it on and off when it suits you. You've hurt us more than you realize." Tears welled in her eyes, and for a moment I felt a flicker of compassion, but I quickly quelled it. I reminded myself that this wasn't about her. It was about me and Mia. "I want to focus on what's best for our daughter. And for that, we need to have boundaries," I said firmly. "You need to give Mark space, and if you can't respect that, then we need to rethink our co-parenting arrangement." Lisa looked shocked, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. "You can't be serious. You'd keep me from seeing Mia just because of him." "If it means protecting her, then yes, I will," I stated, my resolve hardening. "I won't allow your choices to affect Mia any longer. You need to take responsibility for what you've done." The room fell silent, and I could feel the tension thickening the air. She opened her mouth to protest, but then seemed to rethink her words. "I know I've messed up, but I'm trying to make it right. I don't want to lose my family." "You already lost it the moment you chose to betray me," I replied, my voice steady. "I can't keep going in circles. You need to understand the gravity of your actions." The truth hung heavy in the air, and I could see the fight slowly fade from Lisa's eyes. For the first time, I sensed that she was beginning to grasp the depth of her betrayal. Over the next few weeks, the tension between us continued to simmer, but I remained steadfast. I focused on being there for Mia, taking her to school, helping with homework, and being a constant presence in her life. I made sure she felt loved and secure amidst the chaos. When I wasn't with Mia, I poured myself into work and self-improvement. I attended parenting classes, determined to be the best father I could be. I even began reconnecting with friends, rediscovering the joy of healthy relationships. Lisa, on the other hand, seemed to drift further into despair. I caught glimpses of her sadness, but I felt little remorse. She was dealing with the consequences of her actions, and it was about time she faced them. As the divorce proceedings continued, I found strength in the knowledge that I was moving forward, away from the toxicity. I had refused to let her betrayal define my life, and that realization empowered me. One evening, after Mia had gone to bed, I found myself sitting on the couch, reflecting on everything that had happened. I realized that while I had been hurt, I had also grown immensely. I had learned the importance of self-worth and resilience. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts, pausing on Jake's name. I shot him a text. "Let's grab a drink tomorrow. I could use a friend." The next day we met up, and as we caught up, I felt lighter. We talked about everything, my journey through the pain, my hope for the future, and the lessons I had learned along the way. "Life has a way of throwing curveballs, doesn't it?" Jake said, clinking his glass against mine. "But it sounds like you're on the path to something better." "I am," I agreed, a smile creeping onto my face. "I'm finally ready to embrace this new chapter, no matter how daunting it may seem." As the days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, I found peace in my decision to leave the past behind. I focused on healing and building a new life for myself and Mia, a life where I could thrive. Eventually, Lisa and I finalized the divorce, and while the process was painful, it also felt liberating. I was moving forward, ready to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. I thought about how far I had come and how the pain had transformed me. In the end, I learned that betrayal, while devastating, can lead to a new beginning. I realized the importance of self-love, resilience, and the power of choice. Life would always have its challenges, but I was no longer a victim of circumstance. I was ready to thrive, and nothing would hold me back. With Mia by my side and a renewed sense of purpose, I stepped into the light, ready to create a future filled with hope, joy, and endless possibilities.